as one of the most efficient cabinet ministers of all times. Sri Prabhu is the founding chancellor of Rishihood University. He is a guest professor at the London School of Economics, a former union minister who has held no less than 10 portfolios. He was 4 times member of the Lok Sabha and 2 times in the Rajya Sabha. He is a man with a vast experience in many sectors. He is chairman of the MCCI Economists Forum. The Chamber is proud to have him as the chairman of the Economists Forum. Suresh Prabhu.
Good morning, friends. I don't know how to compliment MCCI for thinking about this novel idea of discussing economic issues in a manner that we bring the top economists, in fact, for the change of dates, end of schedules. Not many could attend in person because we changed it quite a few times, but last meeting was attended by the top economists, and I'm sure there will be more will attend as we go along. And today, of course, we have some very distinguished people already. So the idea is looking at impact of some of the economic issues from a perspective of some of the experts who are very distinguished economists and have agreed to be part of this endeavor. Because we know, firstly, as they say in the US, it's all economy stupid. So when the common man votes for the election, there may be many issues confronting him in his day-to-day life. There are so many national issues which will be weighing on his mind. But at the end of the day, he takes a call on how economic is affecting his personal, individual, family life. So economics is not something which is a prerogative of very few, but which is something which is affecting each and every person in the world. Now the problem is, the effect is felt by the people who have nothing to do with economic policies. They are at the receiving end. They suffer or enjoy the benefit of the right or the wrong policies, but they have nothing to do with the policies. And therefore, as I said, at the end of the day, every citizen, every person in this world is only hoping that my government will follow the right economic policy. The challenge is, and I have been in the government, handled 10, 11 portfolios, so I know that governments are supposed to do it, but not necessarily are equipped to do this. Because economics is a very specialized subject. People spend all their life understanding various ways in which the economic forces operate. And therefore, to have the prerogative of making policies with the government, but not necessarily the domain knowledge of that will lie with the government. And as I said, at the same time, wrong policies will affect people, correct policy will benefit people, and therefore there should be some way of having a platform in which concerns of the common people, those who feel it, those who experience it, those who suffer the pain, can also be involved into this. At the same time, there can be somebody like experts, economists who will participate in it. At the end of the day, these deliberations can help the policymakers who actually will implement the policies. So there is need to be some sort of a common platform to be created, and that's what MCCI has done. And therefore, I really want to congratulate him. I know Mr. Rishabh Kothari, when he was a president, he did it, and I'm very happy that the present president, the previous president, all of them have contributed to it significantly. I really don't know how to thank MCCI for this very noble endeavor in promoting national interest and common man's concerns. See, normally, what is MCCI is a trade body, trade association. So they will always try to champion the cause of the business and the members, and rightly so. That's what they are created for. So that's their mandate, that's their responsibility. But sometimes when we represent an issue, we seldom understand that I am taking up an issue of a particular nature. Say, for example, currently the steel industry is facing a lot of problems. And they are saying that a lot of dumping happening and therefore we are facing challenges. Now, if you don't understand the entire nuance of the broader economic system in which this issue operates, taking up a single issue is important, but not understanding its linkage with broader issues is always not very helpful. So this forum actually will help the members also of the MCCI in a great deal, because understanding the macro issues and then how it affects at micro level will also create a right kind of ecosystem to work on that. So anyway, I want to really congratulate you and also thank them, because nowadays it is a world of innovation. So they innovated to make me a chairman of Economics Forum without being an economist. So I was doing a PhD in economics, but I could not complete because I realized it's not that easy. I was doing another PhD in climate change from Germany, which again I could not complete. So both my supervisors, my guides for both my PhD program in German, there were 3, and India 1. They all said, what you speak, you write, we'll give you the PhD. But I could not even write because I'm a lazy person. So this didn't happen. But so I want to thank them for being so innovative of making me a chairman without being such qualified people in members, and I'm not one, but I'm happy that you are giving me this. So I will not pretend to be an economist, because which I'm not, but I will of course try to put forward some of the very interesting issues that we always keep discussing. Today, we are discussing the Government of India, when they release their international trade policy, EXIM policy is to be known earlier, of keeping what, how many trillion? 2 trillion or what? 2 trillion. Okay. So $2 trillion GDP. So of course that includes both the exports, service exports and merchandise exports. Normally, when I was also Commerce Industry Minister, we always used to talk about exports with merchandise export. Now the government has expanded the definition to include service and merchandise together. Firstly, philosophically, why do you need exports at all? Is there a necessity that we must have exports? We can always buy and sell. That was how the world was working. People used to produce something, enough to consume, and if there is any surplus, they will use it as a barter to buy something which they have not produced. It suited both. Somebody who had a surplus, he could sell it to, not sell, but exchange it for something he didn't have, and that's what was working. But even those days, when the so-called barter system was prevailing, there was also barter on going beyond, and this nation concept was not born, but whatever little bit state boundaries were there, people were trading beyond that. And that's how the silk routes developed, the spice routes developed. So this is something which has been happening because they realized that if you want to produce something bigger, higher, then obviously you cannot consume yourself, and then selling it or bartering it will give you benefit. So exports are something which have been there for a long time, or for that matter not export, but international trade has always been there. And in the absence of international trade, probably, we could never have developed even civilizations. We probably didn't have developed cultures. Probably one of the biggest empire ever, they could expand and kept expanding till, like all empires, it always happens, the day of reckoning came and they started retreating. Their expansion was attributed to learning the best practices from others. And where did they learn the best practice? Trade was a route which actually also spread knowledge. You learn many things through trade. When a trader is going from one country to another country, he's learning something. And he comes back, he's not only bringing back the money from the sale that he made, but also some ideas, knowledge. So actually trade is a route which promotes so many different public good as well. So therefore, obviously, we definitely need trade. Now, another philosophical question is, Why we should import? We should only export. Why should any country import? So when I was the commerce minister, people used to ask me this question. I said, it's a brilliant idea. Look at it like this, that export is a good idea because import puts strain on your foreign exchange and there are many things you can say. It also does not help the domestic industry because then when we are importing, we have to compete with foreign products. So I said, this is a very good idea that we only export. The problem with this idea is that all countries say this is a brilliant idea. That's why all countries say we'll now only export. Now if all countries only export, then how can import happen? Or rather than export happen to begin with, because if you're exporting and no other country wants to import because they also want to export, then how will it work? So therefore export and import are something which is part of two sides of the same coin. Even take India. If we don't import, many of our export basket will be very badly affected. Petroleum products, which is India's one of the major exporters. If you are not imported crude oil, how will you export merchant petroleum products? Say jewelry, or diamonds, one of the other basket of major export for India. If we don't export, we don't produce, we don't have diamonds, so we import diamond, polish them. Some of the gold we import, we make it jewelry, of course that not as much as we should. In fact, that was one of my priority was that we should have a bigger share into jewelry market of the world. Because we have so many jewelers, almost in every village there is a jeweler. There is not doctor in every village, but jeweler in every village. And then jeweler is to also act as money lender. So because it's good, you pawn my jewel, after some time don't give me, it's good for me. I keep adding interest and then I sell it. So India's export basket is also boosted by India's imports. So if you don't import, we'll not be able to export. And as I said, even broadly at national level, global level, if all countries decide to follow this brilliant idea of only exports and no import, then how will it work? So therefore, we really need to understand that export is a good idea that helps India to earn foreign exchange. And why do we need foreign exchange? You can say that the argument can be again, why do we need foreign exchange? We can only work within our own country. So if we don't want to import anything, we'll not export anything. That's possible. Some countries are trying to do that. Maybe North Korea is trying to do that. But you are knowing the problem, so North Korea has to use a lot of surreptitious route to get access to foreign exchange so that it imports something. So nowadays, in this modern world, it is not possible. It was not possible in the olden days, as I said, when there's a barter trade. And even today, the international trade is very important, and that will boost domestic economy significantly. There's an interesting example. One of the countries that we keep talking about, a success story, Vietnam. Vietnam is one of the great success stories of growth. In fact, yesterday, one of the Vietnam company, they did a listing on NASDAQ. They threw to SPAC, Special Purpose Acquisition Company. They merged that company. The market cap of that company, NASDAQ, is more than Volkswagen, more than General Motors. A company in Vietnam, which actually has, how long will it remain? Market is something which always, but today this has happened. So Vietnam is a growing country. Why give the example? Vietnam, share of GDP, the exports to GDP, is double almost of their GDP alone. So Vietnam is boosted by their international trade significantly. The biggest exporter of the world is China. So China exports more than probably the total export will be even more than India's GDP. Now, but China is such big exporter, also is one of the biggest importer of the world. So therefore, you must understand the relationship between imports and exports. Exports will boost economy. I gave example of Vietnam. There are other examples also. But some other examples may not be right because, for example, say Saudi Arabia or UAE, who export their percentage of GDP to export is high, but obviously because they produce something which is a very unique and monopoly product like oil and gas. But otherwise, we must therefore focus on exports. That goes without saying. It creates jobs. It also gives access to overseas market and many other benefits. I'm not going to benefit. Now to talk about these numbers, it's always good to have target. But this is almost 2/3 of India's today's GDP. When we say 2 trillion, what is the meaning? 2 trillion. So India's GDP is about more than 3 trillion. And when we say 2 trillion is two-thirds of India's today's GDP. So we have to think about how it's going to happen. I'm sure, I hope it happens and it will happen. But we should try to think about proper strategy. We'll have to decide the market. We had actually done this study. I had done, when I was a Minister of Commerce and Industry, we had commissioned a study as to how to increase India's footprint on global trade as well as on global supply chains and value chains. So I had made a committee and task force under the chairmanship of Dr. Surjit Bhalla, in which there were many members. One of them was that time working for the Tata Industries, who is today's Foreign Minister of India, Dr. Jaishankar. He was member, Dr. Adil Zainulbhai was member, and I had asked them to submit a report. He recorded. Dr. Rajiv Kher, former Commerce Secretary, was a member. And we actually, Chandrajit Banerjee, the Director General of CI, was a member. They did a very good report and we actually started implementing it. The second study I had done was, we had done a market research as to when we say we want to sell product, export, what we will sell. So we should know product and we should know the geography where the products will be sold. So we had created a matrix of product and geography. And we had actually started working on that. So because unless you do market research, how are you going to sell it? Because country also need to understand that country has to also do the market research. And therefore I think we had prepared that. I'm sure the government must be taking it forward. Also, we need some sort of a specialized, dedicated agency. Austrade, which is Australia's trade agency. JETRO, which is Japan's promotion trade agency. So these are the countries which are such huge trade agencies. I think they have almost in every country, in their mission, they have offices specialized in this. We also have commercial counselors in many countries. But I think we really need to think about some of these ideas to actually dedicated service, which government will use to help exporters to sell their products. See, exporter will do it for his commercial gain, but there is also national gain which arises out of that. So to promote and help the individual exporter to realize it, we must work on that. So I think this is very, very important, and we must think that right now when we are trying to set this good target, there is a lot of competition which is already coming up. For example, our immediate neighbor, not neighbor means just neighbor, you can just hop there and go there, is Bangladesh, which exports more garments than India does. So just imagine the country which was not even on the scene for some few decades ago has become one emerging major player into this. So now, for example, when we are talking about diamonds and polishing, we are one of the top. Now some other countries are coming up. So we must realize that competition is also going to come from various quarters, and we must therefore keep this in mind. So one part is merchandise export. The second part is service exports. Services has a huge potential to grow. In fact, just before I finished this merchandise, just came to my mind, I had prepared India's first agriculture export policy. There was no agriculture export policy. The first day I became Minister for Commerce, I was invited for some program which I had previously accepted as a railway minister, but because there was an accident, I resigned, and Prime Minister didn't accept resignation. He said, you do this, another responsibility. So commerce industry I was handling. So first day in program, M.E. Swaminathan was on dais, and I went for that program, organized by a magazine called Agriculture Today. So I said, I had not yet gone to take charge as a commerce minister, because I wanted to honor my commitment of coming for this program. First thing we'll do is to actually create an agriculture export policy. That time the agriculture export was something like $26 billion. Now they are almost $60 billion already crossed, because we have set target for $100 billion. That includes 5 things: agriculture, horticulture, dairy products, meat, agriculture, meat, and so 5 elements of that. Aqua, that is fisheries. So 5 key elements. So this is another area. India was an importer of food, now we are exporter of food. Can you imagine? This has changed in the last 40 years after the Green Revolution. One element, though I made the policy, I must also caution it. When we do agriculture export, you actually are doing a virtual export of water. Because agriculture consumes water. India has only 4% of the fresh water of the world. And when you are exporting, actually what do? You are exporting virtual water, so which has gone into agriculture. So that is something which the natural resources have some relationship with exports. So that we must keep in mind. Or when we are exporting some of the finished goods in mercantile export, you are using raw material, which is something like, for example, when you are exporting steel, for example, the iron ore goes into that. So we must keep this in mind, the element of natural resource that goes into this, and then you use it in India and export it. Unlike that, services export do not have that challenge. In services, you don't actually use any natural resource for mercantile, what mercantile export does. And therefore services export are always better, but they are not that simple that I want to do service export, so I had started and it happened. Now services is a very broad spectrum of services. India is already one of the top exporter of services in IT and related matters. But we can expand this basket dramatically. And now because of technology, we'll be able to offer, say for example, care for the old. And most of the world is aging. We too are going to age sometime. That's a misconception in India, that demographic dividend thinking that India is going to remain permanently young. So I wish somebody has given nectar from somewhere and given it to all the Indians so that we'll remain young for all the time to come. I wish we should not export that nectar. But it's a good idea to export so everybody will remain young. Anyway, so point is, the old care is going to be another very important element of services. And you can do it remotely. For example, a Japanese girl, a lady who is 90 years old and nobody is staying, she's staying alone. Robo may be helping her, but Robo also needs some instruction, something or the other. Suppose we can work out offshore services to make sure that talk to that old lady remotely, even then, if not physically by going there, it can be a service. So services will be hugely expanding. The nature of service, the spectrum of service, the volume of service will be changing dramatically. And India has that advantage because service is, of course, manufacturing will be more and more become robotics oriented, but services will still need element of human touch and human interaction. So services, because we are so many humans, services can be a booster. For that, again, we'll have to make sure that we actually convert quantity into quality. And that's why the skilling. But skilling again is a quality issue. Not just a certificate of skilling is enough, but we must, the taste of pudding lies in eating it. So we must provide a service of a quality that is expected by the recipient of it. So we must work on all these issues. I am sure I don't want to take more time because there are more knowledgeable and more experienced and more capable people than me to talk about issues like this. But as I said, it is an excellent idea. I think I request the President that to make sure that everybody gets it, we can prepare a calendar of next meetings so that we can find out the convenience of most of the people, and we'll say that maybe once in a quarter, once in 4 months, whatever time we decide. If you have a calendar, then those people also can block their diaries, and therefore there will be much better participation, and that will enrich the outcomes. So I really wish to congratulate. I really hope that we reach this 2 trillion soon, because nowadays we are growing economy, so I think everything has to be properly aligned to that thinking. So I hope we definitely do that. So services and merchant export, the complexity is going to change dramatically as we go along. But then again, another just a small part of this is the foreign policy. See, this is not possible, even any increase, unless the foreign policy is directed towards promoting India's economic interest. So economic diplomacy is going to be far, far more important. And to promote exports or international trade, that's a broader issue, we must have excellent foreign policy commensurate with our national economic interest. I am sure there is going to be that. There are some countries which already combine commerce and external affairs together because they realize that's an important thing. So we need an entire government machinery to be promoting this national interest of promoting India's exports, for which we'll have to support all the individual small exporters in doing that. Insurance is one, promotion is one, there are risks involved. Nowadays, when we export, there's also risk involved. So therefore, of course, you have got risk cover available through institutional mechanism. But we'll have to also work on a many interesting ideas to promote this. So I really wish to thank you for giving me this honor of chairing such a fantastic group and such a brilliant idea. I thank all of you for taking interest in participating in such program. So MCCI really needs a lot of compliments for doing this. There are past president, and they are all present, and a secretariat. I wish to congratulate them once again. And as I said, my request is let's plan for the next, say, 4 or 5 meetings in advance, so that it will be easier for everyone to participate properly.